we're still under pretty strict stay-at-home orders, which is good because I have a bit of health anxiety, so I'm always nervous. So I'm always max precaution for coronavirus.
Yeah, try having my health history, right? You know, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna go outside. Not. Try like, you want to shake hands? No, not really. I see somebody, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm gonna get further away and further away and further away. And,
exactly.
Yeah, it's just absolutely insane. We've been holding up. I mean, it's just like, you know, who would have thunk this like 6 months ago that our world would be this, right? It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, the only thing I go out for is my dog. He had an amputation. He had cancer in his leg and his eye. I know, and he's handling it like a true. Like, dogs can teach you so much. This dog wakes up every day on his 3 legs and is so happy. He wouldn't do it. And but we go to his chemo appointment, and just driving down the street, seeing people in masks and the distance, it's just so bizarre. I just never thought I'd ever see something like this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's funny how, you know, it's like, yeah, you're right. We need to learn from our animals. They're so resilient. Like, it's just all they want to do, especially dogs, is be happy all the time.
Be happy.
That's it.
Tail's always wagging. He wakes up in the morning, throws up, and then looks up at me and like wags his tail and wants to play. I'm like, okay.
It's like, we all need to just like watch the behaviors of this animal, and then we're just gonna do that. But you know, don't pee on the rug or throw up on the furniture. But other than that, you know, it's all good.
Other than that,
you know? Yeah. So thanks for doing this. This is fun. I mean, we've been having so much fun. It's like every Friday, we'll just talk to somebody. And it was like, you know, I was thinking, I always kind of like noodle on it. And I know the perfect person's going to just present themselves. And I was talking to Tracy, and I go, who would you like to see me talk to on Friday? And she goes, Tara. And I go, duh. It's like, yes. I mean, it's like your whole, like, for our skaters especially, like, your whole, like, your story is so interesting and so unique and so broad and so wild. I mean, it's like, of all the people that could really speak to our skaters about like the dream and how it, you know, things can just sort of like happen. I mean, you're kind of like, you're the example. Really, you really are the example.
I am. I mean, looking back on, you know, now that I'm old, looking back on my
you're not old. I don't remember being your age.
Really? I feel old. Yeah. But I feel like it is interesting to look back on and just see it all wrapped up in its little package now. And you know, I really do think if there was one thing that I could give as advice was, you know, and for me was the most important part of my journey, was just to really, like, in that childlike dream, to believe that it could happen, and that hard work equals success, and that if you put your mind to something and you really love what you're doing, that there's always a way, and that you can figure it out.
Yeah, nothing replaces the work. I mean, that's where we've gotten to as sort of like this culture of instant gratification. You know, it's like we can get anything we want on our phone. Oh, and my computer doesn't work, I'll just use my phone. And it's always with us, and it's always on, and it's always charged, and it's always, and we can just get whatever we want. It's kind of like anesthetizes our spirit to kind of like, well, why would I ever really want to aspire to anything? Because I mean, I kind of get whatever I want now,
right?
You know, like,
yeah.
So anyway, I go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I do think that that's always been, you know, you learn so much, and you learn discipline and work ethic in sports, and I think that's one of the things that hopefully I carry now with me too. And when I have children, you know, be able to teach them. But yeah, hard work, you know, is, you have to put in the hard work.
I mean, nothing replaces it. I don't care how gifted you are. Nothing replaces like eliminating the bad choices and really getting towards what will allow me to be successful. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. I want to go all the way back because I lived where you were born. Like that was like my career took off in Philadelphia about 2 years before you were born in Philadelphia. Now, what part of Philly were you in?
So I was just born in Philly at Memorial Hospital, and then we drove back over to South Jersey where I lived.
Okay. It's like, what exit? You know, it's like,
Oh,
that's
what
still
exit?
a Jersey joke.
Exit
You
2.
know, what exit? So you're in Sewell, New Jersey. Sewell,
yes.
Right?
Sewell,
New Jersey. And then I saw, like, I do all my most crack research on Wikipedia, and like it's all true, right? And it said that you got the bug watching the '84 Summer Games at age 2. You were like all in, like, you know, pretending like you were standing on a podium and accepting your medals and all that. And so it's like from there, it's like, okay, Tara's going to be an athlete. Is that, I mean, really, is that like kind of the story, or is that just sort of
no,
made up,
I think those were like two separate things. And I think that, you know, I liked the music, like that when they would play, my mom and dad would watch, and I liked the anthems, and I probably just was like interested in watching that. But, you know, my parents didn't come from, they didn't have a sports background. I don't think either one of them really thought that I was going to do a sport, but I was extremely active. So the way that skating came about is they had put me into other like ballet and jazz, and I did baton and all these things, and none of them really stuck. Like baton I did, and I was actually quite good at it. It hit me in the head one day, I cried, and like never took the baton again. It was over.
Game over. Yeah.
It was like I was that kid that would try something and didn't like it, and then it would be done. And one day the way skating started was my mom and her best girlfriend, who had a daughter that was my age. It was like raining in Jersey that day, and there was a newspaper article or something popped up that said if you went to Deptford roller rink, you could get a free Care Bear if you did a skate class that day. And I mean, Care Bear
bribery.
Right. So we went for the free Care Bear, and in like fine print, it was like after, 62 lessons that you finally get your Care Bear. So that's how I started roller skating. And
oh man, that's such a great thing. Okay, Heather and Corey, you got to be listening to this, because we're going to have all these, like, whatever the latest toy is, we're going to use that as bribery to get people into the rink, once this whole thing is over. So well, you started at age 3, right? That was what I saw, age 3. And so by like age 9, you became a national champion for your age group. Tell me about that. Do you remember any of that?
Yeah, so roller skating was really different. It was a lot more social than ice skating. In a way, it is like skating. It's a big family, and but there was a lot more shows and dress up, and a lot more for, I think, kids to get hooked on, and that's what I loved about it. But fast forward, I started competing, and then I went to nationals at 9, and it was pretty much like preliminary nationals, and I won that. And do
you remember anything about it?
I don't. That's the thing. I look back on roller skating, and I remember I don't remember like the competitive life like I do in ice skating. I just remember more of the fun social side of what roller skating was. So it is weird when I think back to that, going to a nationals and competing. But do
you remember your music or anything?
Cats. And
cats.
Skated cats. And had like the bangs of the 80s or 90s that was like both sides.
I remember your bangs. Yeah, your bangs were like, that was it. Yeah, it was a prop. That was like, your bangs were like, that was a statement. These are my bangs.
Exactly. I should have got a score on that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember bangs, like, kind of. But like when you got to be around, like you switched over when you were right after that, right? Like after
I started ice skating at 6. Like we just kind of like went to the rink in Delaware, University of Delaware, to see if I would like it, and I did. And so we did both for a while. And then it was just, I think really, we moved to Texas. And then it was really difficult to figure out time and financially to do two sports, you know, in a super competitive way. So then we did ice skating.
Yeah. And then by like age 12, things started kicking, right? I mean,
the Olympic Festival, that's when I think everything really changed for me, that event. And I was like, that this is something that's interesting. And back to hard work, I, you know, obviously always kept to a certain schedule. And even, you know, during off times, I was the one that was like, oh, I'll do a little bit more. And thank God I did, because I was 7th alternate to go there. Like, I remember it would be like, so-and-so broke her leg. Now you're 6th alternate. You know, this one is sick. Oh, this one is going to miss this event. This one is not going. And somehow, you know, I never thought I was going to go, but I was 7th alternate and showed up.
Isn't that hilarious? Like John Daly, the golfer, like he was like a super deep alternate. Like there was no chance he was going to go to the PGA championship. And like, he ended up getting the invite the night before. He drove his car all night and then he won. You know, it's like that, right? It's like meant to be that. It's like, okay, this one's going to get out of the way, and then that one's going to move, and that one's going to get out of the way, and then here's your clear path now to, and was it North Carolina? Is that where that one was? Where was that?
St. Louis.
You remember?
It was St. Louis.
St. Louis. That's right. St. Louis. Yeah, I did the National Sports Festival before they called it the Olympic Festival. I did it in Colorado Springs, and it was like 85 degrees, summer at 7,000 feet. Perfect for skating.
Great.
With that much water on the ice, right? You know.
Oh, the worst.
Thinking, oh man, if I fall, I'm gonna have like at least 3 pounds of water in my costume, and then I have to carry it to the end, right? So it was like, it wasn't really water. It was more like hot molten lava. You just didn't want to fall because it was like death, you know. So St. Louis, that was good. And so from there, you went to your first international competition, right? And that was in Chemnitz?
Chemnitz, Germany. That was my first competition.
The Blue Swords. I mean, whatever happened to that competition? Do they still have it?
Oh my goodness. I
did research.
Wait, they still have that competition?
No, I was going to ask you if you knew anything about it, you know, because you get your thumb on the, you know, all the figure skating right now, right? So, you know it's going to happen.
Yeah,
bring that back. Yeah.
Chemnitz, Germany, I remember that. It felt so big. I mean, to go to your first international competition and, you know, go on a plane overseas and show up in Germany and skate. And I was always the youngest one, always the smallest one. And I remember that, just looking at some of these skaters going, oh boy, what am I doing here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing was you couldn't really see over the wall, so you weren't going to get psyched out watching anybody, right?
Exactly. I had like blinders on.
Natural ones. But that's when, I mean, from what I remember, because I was on, you know, like I was on tour back then and, you know, just trying to, you know, make things work. But, you know, it was kind of like the media buzz started happening, right? You started really from the sports festival and then this international competition. Then started like, you know, all the chatter, right? Do you remember any of that? Because you were so young.
I feel like at that point I didn't get it yet. You know, I always feel like when you look back and you're, you know, I was good at something. So I remember people, you know, either expecting me to do well or thinking I was going to win the next competition, and then feeling like probably at that young age didn't really even know the pressure, but felt like I probably should win it. But yeah, I don't really remember the chatter at that point. I think I was still a little young.
Well, what I found was like fascinating, and it's kind of like a little different than Nathan, you know, because he kind of spent time at each level, you know, because he was so young. But you were on the podium in novice, excuse me. The next year you're on the podium in junior, and the next year you're on the podium in senior.
Yes, which is crazy. And what's interesting is, you know, didn't win novice, didn't win junior, but just kept moving up.
And all the people that won are like, you know, household names now, right? You know, it's like where did they go? You know,
I know.
What happened? Yeah.
It's weird. I just feel like I was like on a track to, I mean, and that was interesting at that point in skating, you know, you could do that. I mean, I feel like the plan of sticking around and staying in, you know, novice for another 2 years or juniors for another 2 years, I feel like it kind of matched my personality of like, oh, I'm ready for the net, like, just put me in. I'll be the youngest, I'll be the smallest, like, put me in, I'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, I think that Michelle kind of did the same thing. I think she took her gold figure or freestyle test against, you know, I don't even think Frank knew, but she just didn't want to spend any time like in June. She just wanted to go straight to the senior. Well, why waste time? I got things to do. I gotta go.
Exactly.
Gotta go. So it was that first year at senior level, you're on the podium, but it didn't. I mean, the world didn't go as well as you'd planned that year, right?
Not really.
I mean, this is your first taste of like, oops, right?
Well, this was like my first taste of like, I mean, I was with like Michelle Kwan and, you know, at a world championship. So I remember going and being completely freaked out, like had no idea how I was going to do this. And in the short program, I skated after Midori Ito, who I was in awe of. Like one of my awe. Yeah, biggest idols, like loved her. And sorry, I have something.
Because you could probably see like when she jumped like triple Lutz or especially triple toe, you could probably see the bottom of her skates, right? From your
it was incredible. Yeah,
intimidating.
100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she was like a big idol of mine, and she skated right before me, and she messed up, and I remember thinking, oh my goodness, like I could beat the Midori Ito. Like, how is this even possible? And
distraction,
thinking that, and then went out for my short program. Sorry, allergies, pollen in LA. If I keep doing this, I'm not crying.
Oh, and then then it'll be fire season, right?
Yeah, there's always
you'll have the soot in the air, and then that'll do it. And then always. I remember living in LA.
Crying in LA. So I went out for my short program and literally was the Zamboni. I like wiped up the ice on every single element and was in complete shock. And
was that the year that Midori went off into the camera pit? Was that year?
I don't think so.
That might have been before. Yeah, I think that was.
Feel like
yeah, I think that was before that. Yeah, but she was like, there was no rink that could contain her. You know,
right?
Just,
yeah,
like,
she needed more space.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was in 23rd place.
You're 23rd, but you had a good
I was one away from the cut. I was one away from not making the free skate. Like that. Yeah, that's how bad it was, and it was. Just,
I always hated that rule. Always.
Right? I know. For what? 6 skaters. Yeah. So anyway,
it's mean. Yeah.
I was pretty devastated. I was embarrassed. I felt like it was such an amazing thing that I was on this world team, and I wanted to prove that I deserved to be there. And there I am, like in 23rd place, like really helping out, really helping out the team with that. And it was just devastating. But it was such a good learning experience for me. For one, about distraction, and also just learning how to compete with nerves and being on that level. But yeah, it was nice that the next day or the day after that for my free skate, I came back sort of swinging and had one of the best free skates and moved up, you know, from 23rd to like 15th overall.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's okay to skate angry, you know?
Yes.
It's like, it's okay.
Well, what's interesting is I feel like that was part of like my secret recipe was sometimes skating a bit angry. And I think that was probably one of my first lessons of either I can go out there and, you know, skate another crappy free skate to back up my short program, or I can get a bit angry and show everyone that I deserve to be here. And I think that was like what was motivating me that day.
That's awesome. And, you know, again, it just sort of kind of set up. And I always, you know, it's funny because Tracy Wilson, you know, remember her husband, Rob Kinsella, the big, huge rugby player guy?
Yes.
So, you know, he'd be talking to me and I'd be like, and he'd go, hey, and he'd start doing this to me, right? It's like, you know, get the chips, get the chips off your shoulder. And it's like, no, you know, sometimes chips are fuel, you know, it's like
Yeah.
fuel. When I really don't really want to, you know, recognize the situation I'm in right now, and I kind of need a little something extra to kind of like push through everything, those chips kind of come in handy.
They
You
come
know,
in
they
handy.
they really, and it really works. It's like, you know, sell them on a neat, you know, one of those infomercials. Chips, we can put them on your shoulder, and they really work. All
They
right,
help
so
you.
they do. So tell me about the next year after that. Okay, now you're on the world team. What was next?
So the next year was a big learning experience for me, and I'm glad I have it. I mean, everything happened really fast for me, but it's interesting that I felt like it was lightning speed from, you know, novice to winning the Olympics. But in reality, nowadays, I took the long road. I mean, you look at someone like Elena Zagitova, who came
Yeah.
out at her pretty much her first international and won the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I look at that now, and I just, you know, maybe it works, but I also feel like it's got to be really hard on those skaters to learn so much in such a short amount of time. So I am grateful that I had about 3 seasons to figure it out before, you know, my Olympic year. And then next year was it was great by the time I got to nationals, but my Grand Prix season.
And where were nationals that year? Do you remember?
Nationals were in Nashville.
Yeah.
So special.
And you'll be celebrated in 2022 because
I know
we're
so
back.
Right?
We're back and the 25th anniversary of that competition, which was the first major event in that building. That's become so iconic now. I mean,
it really?
Yeah, the first. They were still like bolting seats into the cement when practices were happening. They were really just. I mean, the building was brand new. I imagine the paint was still like wet on the walls.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we're back. But 97 was magical. I mean, that was really.
Yeah, it really was. The first part of the year, my Grand Prix events, I was struggling a lot with nerves and you know, when I was younger, I never thought about anything. I'd play my Game Boy and then go out and skate and never think anything about being nervous or thoughts in my head. And that was the first year that, you know, then you hear the buzz, you hear the chatter, and I was very nervous every time I stepped on the ice, and it affected the way I was skating. And I felt that I couldn't, you know, I didn't know what was happening. It was the scary, for me, you know, and now you've always said it, that it's like 99% mental and 1% physical at a certain point. And it really, at that point, that's what my game was. And it was so hard to figure out the mental side of it. And how
well, I mean, it's all those voices, right? The chatter,
yes.
expectation. Now you got to, you know, my Don Laws called the media fruit flies. He said, you know, they're always buzzing around your ears, and you can't get rid of them. You know, they're just fruit flies.
Yep.
So I thought, well, that's kind of genius, because it made it kind of more like, okay, I'm big, they're little. That's a great way to handle all that, you know, fruit flies, just, you know, shoo them away, but they always come back, right? So expectations really are more insidious than I think people understand them to be. And that's why it was so hard for all those years for somebody to kind of like defend. You know, Michelle was kind of like looked upon as this next golden girl, and there's a lot of media behind her. There's a lot of, you know, momentum, you know, kind of by popularity of the whole Nancy Kerrigan thing, kind of, you know, she was the next, and it was all of that. And then you come in, and it's like this like ray of sunshine, and this little girl with these bangs that are just like, and you were like doing triple combinations before anybody even thought they were possible. And it's all that, right? You're doing like triple loop was your kind of your secret weapon back then. So you had a great international season, you get to nationals, and it's kind of like, you know, again, expectations were great on you, but there were still kind of like great on Michelle as well. And so this rivalry sort of ensued. Yes. I remember, you know, E.M. Swift was kind of like talking about it, and Jerry Longman was talking about it, and all the, you know, kind of pool press for the Olympics were just, you know, it's like game on. It's, you know, Michelle versus, hold on, sorry about that. I didn't put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I am very unprofessional. So you've got now this rivalry and so there's expectation. So coming out of the international season, which went pretty well, you go to nationals, and what were your thoughts there?
So, obviously at that point I knew that my skating had developed. I knew technically that, I could beat anyone at that point. But I also knew that I was, I didn't pay my dues yet, and I wasn't, the favorite. Michelle was clearly the favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that was still a good, like you said, the expectations were there, but they were different for me that year than the following year. This year it was like, I realized where I could go. And then the expectations of having to skate well and prove that I belonged were really difficult. And that's why in the beginning part of the Grand Prix season, I was dealing with the nerves. And then it was sort of how I always like to do things, is like start slow and then peak for Grand Prix final, nationals, and worlds, and like have this very specific formula that worked for me. But yeah, by the time I got to nationals, I knew that I was like on top of my game and that I could technically win, but that, it probably wasn't likely, up against Michelle Kwan. So there I just really just thought, okay, go out, do my clean programs, and we'll see what happens. And obviously, Michelle didn't have a good skate, and a lot changed for me.
Yeah. And then it went from now, and then it was still, I think there was still a lot of the expectation around her. I remember all that.
Yeah.
And then you go to Worlds that year. Now you were 15th year before, and then you go to Worlds that year now as U.S. champion and just, spanking Michelle Kwan. Tell me about that experience.
So when I won nationals, again, it was like that. It was a surprise, like a bit of a surprise. Like, again, I knew that I was capable of doing it, but it just, in skating, especially at that time, there was, you had to pay your dues. You had to be around. You had to get to a certain point.
Get up the ladder. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to go up the ladder. And I was like flying.
No ladder.
Yeah, no ladder.
No ladder. Trampoline. No ladder. Trampoline. Yeah.
So it was a surprise, but it was one of those magical moments. I mean, I'll always remember Nashville because, I skated this really great program and every seat was sold out and there was a standing ovation. And it was one of the, back at that time in skating when it was so popular, it was such a special time to be able to perform and skate. And I just will remember looking up in that arena and it felt so big with so many people and it was so loud. And then seeing that I won the nationals, it was this unbelievable moment that I still remember. But then following in, to that next year, it was game on. Like now the expectations, now I won and had to keep winning.
Yeah. And it's hard because, when you're looking up, right. And it's very aspirational, right. It's very, it's like, oh, I could win nationals. Oh, I could, like, if I do a clean short and just throw it down the long, I could actually win this competition. Then you go the next year, it's like, all right, did somebody put weights in my skates? I mean, it just something feels different or I'm heavier, like a bit heavier. And now, you've got the, this kind of the medal that you're not wearing, obviously. You never wear the medal except on the podium.
Right.
But it feels like it's
always
like
on
this
you.
millstone that's kind of like weighing you down. And you're going into the 98 season and it's like, it's still you and Michelle and you're still kind of, doing this
and
thing.
Still doing it. And it was hard because I think like up until that moment, the media, like you said, is always there, always talking, but I felt like I had a lot more support leading up to winning that title because it was like, oh, we have another great American skater, moving up and years from now, she's going to do something good. And then all of a sudden it collided where there was this intense rivalry between me and Michelle. And now it was also the talk of like, oh, wait a minute, we need to, like, this shouldn't be happening. Like, Tara shouldn't be winning. So then on top of the expectation of feeling like I needed to win everything because I'm the winner of, you know, the national championships, and now I need to hold that up. I feel like it was just, that year was a lot of pressure that I wasn't prepared for.
Yeah. And, you know, it's, again, you go into that nationals and it's like, okay, this is, you know, sort of the, you know, the momentum thing. What was, you know, and this is something that just popped into my head. How was preparation that year different from every other year? Like, did you take on a different type of training or a different mentality or a different intensity with training? Yeah, in 98.
No, I kept my training the same. I mean, you know me, I trained really hard, so I feel like I couldn't add more training. It would probably be detrimental to what I was trying to do. But I feel like, again, the mental aspect was so important for me. And I think like that, you know, looking back, I think a lot of people think, oh, she was so young, she didn't feel the pressure. Oh, she was so young, you know, she just went out and did that. And I wasn't like promoting that I was struggling with the sort of mental aspect of the sport, but that was always my demon. Just like the doubts in my head. I would talk to my music. I remember at the Olympics, we're jumping ahead, but I was having like voices in my head that just like filled with doubt. And I was like, what is happening? So that year I worked with a sports psychologist, which was really helpful. I listened to tapes at night. That I always feel like was one of like my little secrets. He would have me go through my programs and I would talk them onto a tape of I'm going into my double axel. I'm thinking this, I'm feeling good. I'm landing this. I'm going into my triple loop. And I listened to them on repeat at night when I slept before competitions. And I feel like there was just like a lot of positive affirmation and, you know, work that I did with the sports psychologist that I think was helpful that year.
That's so cool. Yeah. Again, it's just, you know, it's almost like brainwashing, you know, it's like you're tuning your mind into expecting good results, right? Which is really very cool. I mean, I think that's really cool. And, you know, you got to take a step back and understand that you're 16 years old. I mean, not even, you're 15 years old. And all the stuff that's happening, you know, physically and psychologically and everything. And I mean, it's complicated. I mean, it's really complicated.
Yes.
Because it's identity, it's, you know, peer pressure, it's all the other stuff.
Everything.
And
it's
so
physical. Like I grew throughout these years. Thank God I grew very slowly, but I grew almost 2 inches every year. And 2 inches doesn't sound like a lot, but you know, you feel, you know, from each year. So, you know, from nationals in 97 to 98, I felt that, and it was like, oh, I don't like this. Like, what is this? And having to figure that out. And yeah, it was an interesting time.
Yeah. So the 98 season, it's, you know, Olympic year, Nagano, which is kind of a like nondescript city. You know, I mean, it's kind of like, where were nationals that year? Remind me, were they in Philadelphia?
Philadelphia. I'll never forget.
Back to your birthplace.
Yeah.
And that was in the old Spectrum or the new building? I think it was
the new building.
It was the new building. Yeah, I remember they were building it and we were doing media and all that stuff back then. Those are fun years. Those are really fun years. So you're in the brand new building. It's right across the parking lot from the old building, which I think Peggy Fleming won her nationals before the Olympics in that building. And tell me about, you know, how the competition rolled out. I love these stories about, you know, it's like I did this and Michelle did that and the judges did this.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. And that year was, again, you know, I've realized it. I only really realized this now later in life, but, you know, again, I had a tough Grand Prix season, my actual Grand Prix. A Grand Prix final, I won both those years consecutively. And it was like, I finally realized, like, the more pressure I was under, the better I performed. Like, I realized this recently because I was, when I started doing, you know, broadcast and commentating and hosting, and I would be like, why did I choose, like, live television? Like, why, you know, I went from, like, this high-pressure sport and competing, and then I choose, like, live, pressure-filled television, and I realized it's like I thrive under that feeling, and I never knew that. And if someone could have told me that to my younger self, everything would have changed. And I finally started to figure that out in 98 because I saw my track record, like, oh, at Skate Canada, I'm messing up, but at the Grand Prix final, when there's so much pressure, I'm not. And so the sort of mental game for me was I realized the more pressure I'm under, the better I do. So it almost like released some doubt of like, well, why can't I always perform at a certain level? I just needed it to be really stressful to skate well. So I just needed like a lot of pressure to skate well. But anyway, so I went through that season. Grand Prix final was one of my most memorable competitions because it proved, I skated, it was in Germany, it was in Munich, and it was when Tanya had so many, remember she had I can't remember, just a bone issue or a bone disease or something like that. And she came back, she's in her home country. She like has the program of her life. I'm skating after. It literally took 15 minutes to like clear the ice. And I went out there and I had the program of my life. And it was like, okay, I'm on track. And I can like handle pressure. But anyway, fast forward to nationals. I am in my hometown. Literally everyone I know is there. It is, I'm prepared. I'm ready. I go out for my short program. I hit like a beautiful combination. And usually if I hit my first jump, I'm good.
Yeah. So
and
great.
And I went in for my flip, and it's like, when like the pick goes down and down and down, like a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, oh,
you pick down, that's where the force goes. Nothing goes up, right?
Just goes down. I was like, what is happening? And I just wiped out like my legs up, and it was in every newspaper the next day of that position.
Flattering.
And I was in shock. Like this couldn't be happening in my hometown with all my family there. And then this is pretty much an Olympic trials, and this is happening to me. And it was just devastating. And I was sitting in 4th place. So it became more about not defending my title. It became more about, am I going to make it on the Olympic team? And, because
and then there's that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the federation probably, even if I came in 4th, might have said, hey, reigning world, but you don't feel that in the moment, and you don't want to leave it to that. So I was terrified. In my head, I really thought I wasn't going to make the Olympic team. So that whole competition changed for me in that moment of defending my title, which I wanted to do, to, oh crap, we need to make it to the Olympics. So it was a pretty terrible short program. And then the free skate, I was just so nervous, but went out and did a great free skate, and sort of, there was redemption there, but the whole competition just, you want to defend your title. So
and you're heavy. Your skates are heavier, and it's just harder. It's one thing to get there. It's really tough to get there. It's way harder to stay there.
Yep.
And that's, no one can prepare you for that. Like no one. And it's just kind of like, oh man, you got to live through it. I remember my second Worlds, I was freaked out after the first one, like totally freaked out. And I just thought I didn't feel worthy of any of it, and so I go the next year, and I realized, I survived that year, and I won again. And I'm looking around, I go, it's just guys. I'm just competing against people, guys just like me, I mean, they're all insecure and weird and messed up, and, we're all just people, and, we're all just trying to do stuff. Right. So you get through that nationals, and then you go to now the Olympics, and the difference between you and Michelle at that one is, I remember Michelle was staying in our hotel, and you were doing everything, right? You just decided, this is my Olympic experience, and I'm just going to be an Olympian, and I'm going to be a tourist, and I'm going to wear the jackets, and I'm going to do the ceremonies. I'm going to do it all, right? And a lot of people don't realize that the opening ceremonies, okay, I'm going to break it down really simple, are at the beginning of the Olympics, okay? Right? And the ladies' championship is at the end of the Olympics, and like nothing's worse than kind of being in the moment and the spotlight, between those two extremes, and you just really just like you were so light and so laughing and fun, and you were enjoying every moment, and it was really fun. Vern and I had a
It was
blast
amazing.
watching you at that Olympics because you were just doing everything. You were everywhere doing everything.
Well, I think like what happened was a lot. I'm glad that I lost my title at that nationals because so much changed for me from the nationals to the Olympics. Like I went home and I struggled really hard in the beginning. I was skating terribly. Again, sort of the chatter in the media was like, oh, Tara now, you know, she's in second. She's going to be in second at the Olympics, and that's what it's going to be. And there's not going to be, you know, we're not going to see Tara win the Olympics. So I feel like I felt already defeated. I already felt like, oh, this is.
Oh, you just muted yourself. Are you muted? I think you muted. Try it again.
Wait, can you hear me?
There you are. I can hear you. Yep.
Okay. I don't see you.
Okay.
Oh, there you are.
That's just, yeah, okay.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Seeing me is overrated, you know. It's just,
I was just really struggling. I struggled at home. I wasn't able to train the way that I wanted to, but I think that you know, few weeks before the Olympics helped me.
Get it out.
All the bad stuff out.
Yeah, get it out.
I cried a lot. I like did terrible programs, and then
Me too.
Again, it's all about peaking. It's all about getting to that moment that your body's preparing for, you know, that you don't even consciously know about. So I feel like that was part of my process. So when I got to the Olympics, I really just was like, yeah, I'm gonna have fun. I'm going to go to all the things. I'm going to meet all the people. And, you know, to me, the Olympics, obviously I knew I could win the Olympics, but going to an Olympics was a dream of mine. So, you know, I remember stepping off the bus and remember thinking, okay, right foot first, and you're stepping on Olympic soil for the first time. And all of that felt so magical to me. And, you know, the cafeteria with all the athletes there, and they had a sewing room and I was sewing my Olympic rings. Like there was just so many cool moments that I enjoyed, which helped me because it also distracted me from, you know, a lot of the pressure and expectation that was on me.
Yeah. And you rose to the occasion. I know Michelle won the short, and I remember Vern and I were sitting up there and all expectations, you know, the media was, you know, all in Michelle's corner, and everybody was, you know, kind of thinking, you know, it's over. It's a foregone conclusion. This will be, you know, the crowning of the next queen. It's whatever, all the stuff that, you know, cliche stuff that press can't help but do. You know? And Vern, you know, we get her on camera. I was like, not so fast.
Yep.
I really think that there's something here for Tara. I think honestly she has a great chance of winning. And that was on camera. And we had done, and you know, my producer's like clicking in my ear going, are you crazy? It's like, well, like, let's just watch them skate. You know, why do we do this? You know, where we have to be so right and prognosticate all the time. I go, let's just really enjoy this competition.
Right.
And you went out and you threw it down.
Yeah, I feel like after the short program, I got that triple flip out of the way again after nationals, and I knew I was second in the I always was second in the short. You know, technically is where I was going to come through in the free skate. So I felt like I was in prime position. I was so excited, and I was ready. I mean, at that Olympics in practices, I was doing triplets, triple loops. I was like, I was ready. Like this was my time. And so, you know, I was hearing, like you were hearing a lot of the chatter that, oh no, she's in second.
Can't happen. Yeah. Can't happen.
Right. But I kind of, at that point, knew I was like setting myself up for the win if I skated well. So then it just all came down to the pressure of having to perform and land that triple loop and, you know, do a clean skate. So, you know, that night was insane. I feel like everything that you prepare for and you get used to and learn how to compete changed. And now all of a sudden, every feeling I was like, my legs were shaking. Like I didn't have that. I used to just kind of feel unsettled. Now my legs were actually shaking. And, you know, there were all these other feelings that, you know, I wasn't prepared for. And I remember they had a back rink there and I skated 5th, and Michelle skated before me, and I hated waiting because then my nerves would get, they would build up. But so we went to this back rink, and I was, just trying to like pace it out and walk around. And I remember Michelle was skating, and I remember Richard, my coach, saying, okay, put your hands over your ears, because you could still kind of hear.
Yeah, I always la 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 la. Yeah.
So I did, but then I like went like this a little bit too early, and I just kept like 5'9", 5'9", 5'9", and I was like, oh my goodness, like she must have had the program of her life. There's no room unless I get all 6 O's at an Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Like, what is and I remember having that moment where I was just like, oh my goodness, like, is there a chance for me anymore? And that kind of messed with my head a little bit. And I remember taking the ice, thinking like, I just want to get off the ice. Like, where is like an exit plan here? How do I get out of here? And like,
see, skaters, like, it's the same for everybody. And any moment, you're like, okay, this is
like my legs are still going forward, but like I'm going backwards. It's horrible. And I remember my program started, and I had a lot of doubt in my head. I kept thinking like, oh my goodness, I'm going to mess up this. I'm like, oh, my triple flip, oh, my triple, like, and I remember finally like coming around the rink into my opening, like easy double axel, and thinking, okay, this has got to stop. Like, I don't got time to do this. And I remember getting that angry feeling, and then I skated kind of angry, and either to prove it to myself or to others, I have no idea, but I skated, and my chips were there. I skated angry.
Yeah. And I remember that call. It was like triple toe, half loop, triple saw, no speed. Are you kidding me? Yeah, that was amazing. That was just and your joy was so contagious. And yeah, I mean, you're now in the Sonia Eni conversation of being the youngest of all time, and this and all of that. And it was just thrilling to watch and to be a part of. I mean, it was just, I'll never forget it. And you won the Olympics, and then you turned professional.
Yep.
Which everybody's like, she's 16? I mean, all of us in Stars on Ice were like, oh my goodness, we're going to have the next Olympic champion. And Ilya Kulik, the men's Olympic champion, come to us. And it was just like this thing, and it was huge, and it was just unbelievable. And, you were Stars on Ice for the 98, 99, 99, 2000, 2000, 2001, and then 2001, 2002. And then you stepped away. Mm-hmm. Was it, I mean, your body was breaking down at that point, or?
No, obviously you remember I went through hip surgery, which, I think that doctor, I
Philippon,
thank him every day.
He's in Vail now.
Saved my career in a way, to be able to skate anymore. I just think that, my hip, once that happened, it was like never the same. But again, looking at the last year on Stars, I had such an amazing, I wasn't doing triples or, but I was still tripling, and I was fine. I just think like I burnt out. I burnt out.
Easy to do. Yeah.
And it was too much. Again, it was for me too much pressure from, all these years. And I think, obviously as you get older, you look back and you realize, oh, I also see where other pressures are coming from. Like now I understand how this happened. But, it really wasn't my body. My body, like Dr. Philippon kind of saved me. And I just think it was more, I just burnt out, and it was just too much pressure, and I needed a break. So I remember thinking, okay, if I just take like a year or two, and then I'll like, I never thought I wasn't going to come back and skate, but that's how it happened. I mean, skating changed so dramatically within a few years, but that's what happened. And it's so weird. I look back now, I wish I could have prevented some of that, because skating on Stars was one of the best times in my life. Like obviously winning an Olympic medal, and also the years we did it were so, I mean,
awesome.
So awesome. I mean, like, I tried
sold
to
out
explain
houses.
to my husband, because I was like, you know, he sees skating now, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I wish you just like could walk into Madison Square Garden one night or Staples Center, and we were completely sold out, and it was so loud, and you'd walk through that curtain, and we'd have these fun group numbers, and it was just, you know, I miss that so much.
Yeah,
I
me
loved
too.
it.
Yeah, it was awesome. So you step away and you get into acting a little bit, and you're just
I feel like, you know, it's interesting. At that time, I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I felt like, okay, there was a lot of pressure I was under. And I just felt like I couldn't keep it all together like I had once done for, you know, all of my years in skating. And I thought, okay, well, I have to like not skating, because I would still go to the rink and skate every day, but I'm like, well, I'm not like getting ready for stars. So what am I doing? I need to do something. So, you know, I had been working with CBS at the time, so it was like an easy transition to do more acting. And I really enjoyed it. It was like a challenge, kind of like skating was back in the day, where it was like, you have to work your way up, you have to figure out how to do it. And I liked that. Until I realized that like that wasn't what I really liked. Like it gave me the similar feeling as skating, but not really. Like I thought it gave me that feeling, and it's way different. I'm not saying that acting isn't amazing, but like skating's way better, you know, that feeling and the performing. And I just, you know, I think I was always trying to recreate that, and then couldn't, and was trying to figure it out.
And then, you know, the broadcasting thing sort of presented itself. And I remember seeing you at nationals, and Rob Dustin would always tell me, he goes, Tara is really good. Like she's really good. And she works hard, and she's like in it, and she's very humble, and she's asking lots of the right questions, and she's doing this and doing that. And you were just really, you know, cutting your teeth on Ice Network and really starting to get the understanding of it. And then Sochi, I mean, you and Johnny came into Sochi, and you were calling every performance live. And then you guys stole the show in such a spectacular fashion that it changed like everything, you know, for NBC's coverage and you know, it was just a really great moment for you to get, you know, now this kind of validation that, you know, the hard work and the time you spent to like build your craft really just came through.
Well, I remember, so like after I stopped acting, and then, you know, it was interesting. Then I went through a period where I became a real person outside of skating and figured out what life was, which was amazing. And I'm so glad I did that. And however my plan went, of course, I wish I could have, you know me, I used to cry when we were in Portland and Stars was over. So like, I probably would have just kept doing Stars my entire life, because
I kind of did that. Yeah.
But it's awesome. Yeah. But you know, I'm also glad that my life went like this, because in skating, it's such a small world, and, you know, you don't really know what the real world is like and how to adjust and how to be, you know, a normal adult. And it was really nice to experience like those things that, you know, I missed out on high school. I missed out on all these other things. So when I was doing a little bit of acting and living in LA, I found my friend group. I started dating. I started doing like the normal things. I started like going on vacations and traveling. I was like, this is crazy. I thought I just was like born to train. I don't understand what this is. So that was really fun. But then of course, just in my nature, I needed something. And I've always, you know, as you know this, as a skater, you're always looking for that same feeling. And, I was doing some acting and hosting. And when I was doing the hosting, I realized when it was live, again, I liked that feeling. Like it started.
Butterflies, a little adrenaline. Yeah.
So I liked that. And so that's how it started. So I was like, oh, like I could do, you know, some commentating or broadcast or something in skating. And so I started with Ice Network, and I was like, I'm going to work my way from the bot. It was like 2010 when I started. And I really worked hard at it. And I remember I was so bummed. You probably don't know the story. Molly Solomon, because it's a little further along. Because I really worked.
Molly, you know.
So I couldn't.
I love Molly.
It was hard for me to get into it. Like I feel like people weren't really I remember calling a few people like multiple times, being like, "Can give me the chance to do, you know, to try." And I was like, okay, I got to work my way up. And I remember when I was with Universal Sports, so excited I got that. And Molly then said one time, like, you and Scott maybe can do, because Universal, I don't think you always did the Grand Prix final. I can't remember how it was.
It was sort of sketchy because I was working and I was doing my
right. So she said, maybe we can get Scott and you to do the Grand Prix final together. Now this happened, like this probably, I thought this might happen for like a total of 2 months. Like I had never been happier. Like I literally thought like my hard work is paying off. Like this is it. And something happened and like we didn't, you didn't do it. I didn't like, and I was like crushed. I remember thinking like, that was my moment. Like I waited for this moment. I finally made it. I wish we had that, but yeah, I worked really hard and then I loved the feeling I got doing live television. And we went to Sochi and, you know, I was just happy to be there. I didn't even know if they were going to send us. So, you know, our workload was pretty intense
yeah. And, you know, and ours wasn't, I mean, you know, it was so great because by the time they showed everything live, you know, by the time they came to prime time, they're going, we'll just show the, you know, the winning performances and because everybody's already seen it. And so my workload there was kind of like, okay, what are we going to do for dinner tonight? Or what are we going to do? You know? It was kind of like that, but it was the transition that was, you know, I knew it was going to happen. And it was really great the way that it came through because you guys created a lot of buzz and excitement there that, you know, has followed through.
Yeah.
I know we're out of time and man, I could talk to you for another hour. But, you know, you're married now and you're, you know, I mean, you know, Cap is like the guy in sports television. He's done so many great things, but I loved reading about your engagement story.
Yes.
Could you just share that really quickly? I know we're out of time, but I just want to hear it.
No worries.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, no, I'm so lucky I found him. You know, I was going to the sports Emmys. And real quick, I know we're out of time. It's sports Emmys for NBC to present. And he was there getting many Emmys for his stuff. And I presented one. So we have this picture. I never met him. But his aunt, who is Chris Jansing, who works, you know, with NBC, I was friends with her. And she's like, you presented an Emmy to my nephew. Now you guys have to like go on a date. And so she set it up. And we went on this date together. And then 7 months later, he proposed. But I love Christmas and I was living in New York at the time and I always loved like Christmas windows at the stores. And so I was completely surprised, but he bought out a window that he had this painting made of him proposing to me in front of my house here in LA. And we were just like, he took me out to a nice dinner and then this Christmas window. And I was like, oh my, is that you? What is that?
What's happening? What's happening here?
And then he was down on one knee. So it was pretty special. So yeah, life is good. Married
and
life.
And the big
is
wedding.
good.
The big wedding was awesome.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Middleton. It was so funny because you put me at a table with all the sports, like, you know, television people. And Dan Patrick and I got to be friends years ago at a golf tournament. We see each other like, ah! And he just reached out to me recently to say, everything okay? And I go, yeah, feeling great. Just staying away from the bug. And he wrote me back and he goes, oh man, I took the under. Yeah, nice guy. What a friend's for.
Oh my God.
Hey, Tara, thank you so much for doing this. And I love how your life has turned out. And, you know, you've worked so hard for all of it and you deserve every bit of it. And,
Thanks,
and I'm just so proud of you. And you know, you're a good person. And I really want, you know, people to know just, you know, what a quality, amazing person you are. You've always been supportive of me and everything I've ever done. And you've shown up at, you know, care shows and you've done all of that. And I'm just so grateful for our friendship and for the impact.
Me too.
And
I feel so lucky, obviously. I mean, you're the Scott Hamilton, and I feel lucky not only that, you know, we skated at an awesome time, but that you were part of my story almost all the way. So thank you.
Well, thanks for doing this. And I'm a remnant now, but that's okay. I'm loving every bit of my life.
Here. This really means a lot to all of us and all of our skaters. Tara, thank you for taking time out of your day. This is really awesome.
Of course.
Great to see you, Scott. Thank you so much again.
Oh man,
Appreciate both of you. Thanks for being here.
oh, it's so great. Well,
Thank you
love you so
guys.
much,
So much.
and we'll
Bye,
see you
guys.
soon.
Thank you.
Stay healthy. Stay healthy.
Thank you.